So I pulled this where it all began from way back. I think it's important for an artist to really have a specific influence to really start their career. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about that, what that was for you.
Yeah, I guess my first influence would have to be my parents, actually. It was such an honor to grow up alongside them, and they always pushed me to channel my creative energy. I'll never forget, my dad one time was at the Met, and he had met this art student who was also a teacher, and so he invited him over to the house, and I remember our first lesson where Max and I were drawing like a bowl of apples or some landscapes at our home, and I really enjoyed that process of kind of going through it all and having a goal in mind and watching it materialize before my eyes. I don't think it was maybe your favorite process, but...
No, I dropped out literally the first day.
But for me, that was something I really enjoyed, and as our lessons got longer and we'd go to Central Park for 4 hours, kind of coming back with a finished work to show mom and dad and watching their eyes light up was a really, really meaningful moment to me, and that's the feeling that drives me to do everything I do today. And to have all my work up here and to have you all watch it and see it in person is a really amazing experience.
Yeah, I think it's great to see how far you've come, and it's great to see the show and the success that you've had so far. So if I remember correctly, this was the first piece you ever sold to a collector, correct?
Yeah, that was the first piece. That was right after I graduated the University of Michigan. Up until that point, Polaroid had been like a hobby of mine, something I really enjoyed doing, but I really wanted to take it to the next level, and I was wondering, how can I make a business out of this? How can I, profit off of this thing that I love so much? And it was kind of this eureka moment where I was looking at this 4-inch Polaroid, and I looked up, and I saw one of these Richard Prince Instagram canvases. And if you've seen one of these before, they have kind of a similar border, but they're much larger. They're almost 7 feet tall and printed on canvas. So I had this idea, can I print my own Polaroids and blow them up, and would the resolution hold? Is this something that would look cool? Would people be interested in this? So I took this image, which was a nice iconic image, I thought, and I brought it to a photo lab, and I was just really mesmerized by the resolution and kind of the finished product. And so then I posted this photo on my Instagram, and immediately I found a buyer, one of my friend's dads who's in LA, and he's been a great collector since. So shout out Fabi. But it was just such an amazing kind of experience. And then I came to you and Dad because you guys knew a lot about kind of the more business side of things, so you helped me with the pricing and the edition sizes. And so since then I've been printing on different mediums. Downstairs you'll see some acrylic mounted dye bond prints, and then there's the aluminum Polaroids here, but I like to always keep the border itself, which really ties it back to the casual nature of the Polaroid and makes it seem like a giant Polaroid, and that's one of my favorite aspects of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously you started out kind of drawing and painting in an early stage, but now the focus of your career has really been fundamentally on photography. So kind of how have you focused and why have you focused on photography pretty exclusively at this time?
Yeah, so the reason I started photography, I was actually kind of thrown into it. I was studying abroad in Paris at the time, and the only credit that transferred back to University of Michigan that I could take was a photography course. Now, in the beginning of the class, we all needed to grab cameras. Everyone was getting these DSLRs, Canons or Nikons or whatever it was, but I wanted to do something a little bit different, something that would set me apart from the crowd. And so I remember I was in this old vintage store, and this Polaroid kind of called my name in the corner, and I really just fell in love with it. It kind of combined everything that I like doing, which was connecting with people, traveling, exploring, and being able to create on the spot was just something I really fell in love with.
And then diving deeper into photography, what about the Polaroid specifically is what that really allowed you to develop?
Polaroid is such a magic medium to me. I love every aspect of it. The fact that it's a true, unique, one-of-one original. If you think about any form of photography, if it's digital, it's a file. If it's film, even, it's a negative, so you need to create a print from it. But the original Polaroid is the only form of photography. It's almost like a a painting or a sculpture, and that it can never be replicated. And I really fell in love with the tangible aspect and something I could put my hands on and really just dive deep into. And since then, I've been experimenting with different Polaroid cameras, but that's kind of always been the cornerstone.
Yeah, and building off of that, I feel like you've really explored the possibilities that the Polaroid, or pushed the limitations and the boundaries of a Polaroid, and that has allowed you to shoot with film cameras now. Kind of, that's the natural progression that I've seen in your career. Is there a reason, that you're did you think that you grew sick of the Polaroid, or?
No, it wasn't that I kind of grew sick of it. It was more that as I was going on these trips, it was honestly because I was filling my backpack with these rolls of film, but Polaroid film is quite big, and you can only get 8 photos per pack. So I couldn't really create as much as I wanted to on these trips. So for that reason, I got a 35mm camera. And as I started shooting more with that, I realized that, while Polaroid is so beautiful and so great for certain things, it does have its limitations. And there were moments that, I shot with 35 and I kind of appreciated the look that gave.
So I was looking through like a few of your old photographs. I wanted to see the contrast between a Polaroid and a 35mm. I actually found these two, which I think, so there's the Polaroid image.
And yeah, I took both of these images in White Sands, New Mexico. And yeah, as you can kind of tell, with this one here, it's a little bit, it's still beautiful in its own right, but it doesn't fully capture the true colors and the blue sky, as well as, this more saturated version. And this one I shot on my 35mm camera with positive film, and I really started to enjoy the more manual aspects and how I could, tweak the exposure and have a lot more creative freedom.
Yeah. So in today's day and age, where a lot of artists, emerging artists, are focusing pretty exclusively on painting, sculpture, drawing, and photography is kind of a second choice medium to some extent. Why do you think it's important to shoot with film in your?
I think today, in this day and age, everything is getting so digital. People are staring at 5 screens at the same time, and you're opening your phone and looking at Instagram first thing in the morning. And shooting with these old school cameras has really forced me to kind of slow down and, really compose the shot and kind of think in a way that's almost going out of style. And I've really enjoyed kind of the tangible, the process of, storing film in my fridge and just the whole lifestyle that comes with shooting with film cameras.
There's some drawbacks from me, an uneducated photographer.
Oh, definitely. It's definitely kind of tricky to shoot with these old school cameras because you never, know what you're gonna get. But I've actually learned that's become one of my favorite things, that you can, plan it out as much as you want, but there's always going to be this extra layer that, anything can happen.
Unpredictable, essentially.
Right. Completely.
This one is one of those beautiful overexposed shots that I wanted to share with everyone and get your thoughts on how it was created.
So this one, to be honest with you, is a complete accident. I opened the back of my camera and the sun exposed the roll of film before it had completely wound up. So it kind of created this beautiful spectrum of color. And since then, I've been trying to kind of emulate this because I love, the rainbow of color that comes with it. And that's something you would never get with a digital photo. You know exactly how it's going to look.
Right, exactly. I mean, you can't ever necessarily intend on these imperfections, but they are really what make
they're the happy
each
accidents.
one of these works so special and unique. So this is another one that I picked up that I saw for you with like the little imperfection of the blue hash marks scattered across the surface. Sometimes we see that in with artists trying to actually make that mark, in their work, look very seamless and flawless. And I think you've captured that quite beautifully in this image.
Yeah, this is my take on Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring. And these blue streaks that you mentioned, that's never something that I could plan, but I really love the added texture that they bring to the photo. And again, you're never going to get this type of crazy thing happening with digital, but with Polaroid or with 35mm film, it's always unexpected, and that's what kind of keeps it always interesting, and it's never a dull moment.
And then this last one was taken just most recently in our trip to Kenya. And I remember you kind of at the beginning of the trip were a little nervous about this new film that you had gotten. You didn't know how it was going to come out. There was like this.
Yeah, so this type of film that I shot with has been pre-exposed to different wavelengths and different lights while in the darkroom. And so I knew that there was going to be these kind of psychedelic, chromatic colors that came in, but I had no way of knowing exactly, where in the frame they would pop up. But for it to happen, and kind of mimic the subject of these two trees is something really special and, a one in a million opportunity. But for it to happen and to come together like this, that's the magic of film for me.
Absolutely. And this one's downstairs, right?
Yeah, that's by the pool downstairs.
Yeah, no, this turned out fantastic. Because I remember seeing that in real life. It's not the same with these little imperfections.
Dad really wanted to hang out by this tree because he liked the sound of the birds for sunset. So thank you for putting us in that location.
And then building off of that trip in Africa, there was a moment where we were in this Maasai village tribe, and I was kind of taking a step back, and I took a photo of Alex interacting with the tribesmen.
It's a great pic, by the way. We should put this by the pool.
This is my shot on my iPhone. Thank you. But it was like a really nice moment where you had, such a direct interaction with them through the Polaroid camera because you were able to just kind of give them a tangible object as opposed to that digital.
Yeah, I'm sure these guys have seen, hundreds, if not thousands of tourists shoot digital photos, but they were really excited by the fact that they could see the photo develop before their eyes. And I love, that's why I fell in love with the medium. So to be able to share it with these warriors was an amazing experience. And to think that, maybe somewhere in the plains of Africa, there's a more Polaroid just hanging around is a great thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess my next question after this trip, since you always put together a beautiful book after your travels, is when do you think the Africa?
I'm working on the African book.
Right.
It takes a long time. The process is interesting, but it's
You've made a few now, right? I think you've made like 5 or 6 now.
Yeah, so I started making these books when I was traveling in Tulum, and I had brought my 35mm camera, and I had all these beautiful images. But up until that point, I had only really been creating with Polaroid and making Polaroid art. So in order to kind of do something and create a finished product with all these other 35 images, I started making these books. And I really fell in love with the process of narrowing down which images to choose and then kind of trying to compose different page layouts that I felt highlighted each image. This one, for example, the petal, in the center of the flower on the left, these 5 red dots, and then you see on the lizard here, they just happen to also appear. So these are location-based books, and I make an edition of 100. And then I also had this idea with help from my dad again. He told me to also make a limited edition with a red cover, and this is an edition of 18, and that actually has a Polaroid in the last page of it. So that
So
kind
you're
of
doing something unique within.
right, exactly. There's a one-of-one Polaroid at the end, and that kind of ties it back into the other form of photography that I create with on these trips.
I mean, for a young artist, I think these books are great to showcase your work to a much wider audience, at a slightly more accessible price point, so you can have a bunch of younger people.
Right. It was also something I wanted to be able to, help have my friends support and something that they could collect within their price range. So these are all, by the way, by the pool in this room. If you want to check them out, there's about 6 or 7 of them. So feel free.
And then because we're coming to the end now, I wanted to touch base on my favorite body of your creation so far. I think that we're calling them the mosaics.
Yeah.
I think that I'll show you guys one of them. This is one where I was actually there in the south of France, and I saw Alex taking these photos, random areas, and I was like, what are you putting
people thought I was probably crazy. I was hovering above the pool, just 6 inches away shooting, and I only had, maybe 5 packs of film left. So to kind of take, 20 photos of just like where the pool meets the concrete was kind of.
It turned out into something like, mosaic, beautiful. Like it elevates each individual photograph to be become such a strong
Yeah,
image.
so for these, you really have to kind of have this idea in your mind of where you want it to go, and then compose the individual, photos, and then, but always in your mind, you have to have the larger
the
composition.
foresight to see what
Exactly.
is going to come. And
So this
was
one,
taken
yeah, this one's in White
in
Sands.
White Sands, right?
On the same trip that you can see a lot of the work to the right of the pool, those black and white ones.
And this
also.
one's here too, right?
Yeah, that's by the books actually, the
Okay,
original.
Yeah. Yes, so definitely take a look at this one. This in person, it's really fantastic. And then there was
Oh yeah, this is my ode to Van Gogh. So he was my favorite painter and drawer as I was growing up, and so I always wanted to kind of create a piece that showed my love for him. And the sunflowers are his, so I tried to make an ode to him with that one.
And I think this is one of the strongest that I've seen you create to date so far. So
Thank you. Yeah, this is kind of like the Jasper Johns meets Chuck Close piece, where up close there's all these different American narratives, but then you take a step back and you see that they're all creating this iconic American flag image.
So, that as you end one of these question and answer type sessions, it's always asking about the future and where you think you're going in your career, in maybe not just your career, but how you, from an artistic point of view, where you think you're going to take, what the trajectory is. Basically.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot to explore within the world of film and Polaroid photography. I would love to kind of work on a larger scale. Just recently I was in Berlin and I saw one of the last remaining 24 by 29 inch Polaroid cameras, which is as big as like a car. And I became friendly with the man that operates that system. And so it'd be amazing to, shoot and then, whereas a small Polaroid is, a normal Polaroid is just 4 inches, this one is 2 feet big. So it could, serve as a cool way to kind of continue that process. And then also another thing I've been considering is kind of to tie back to my beginnings as a painter and a drawer, to kind of start painting and drawing over these images and really make it even more of a unique one-of-one piece.
I'm very excited to see where it all goes.
Gotta check it out.
Well, thank you all for